The grand atrium of the Celestial Accord summit gleamed under a dome of shifting starlight. Suspended high above in orbit around Iliari Prime, the diplomatic vessel was an architectural marvel, polished floors of crystalline stone, air-perfumed. Lightly with flowering strains of Larisha, the Iliari peace bloom. Everything, from the flowing banners to the respectful murmur of voices, exuded control, elegance, balance. And then came the sentence that shattered it all. They can breed any time of year? The words floated through the air like a spark. Over dry leaves, Princess Lysera stopped mid-step. Her silver robe swayed gently as she turned, head high, ears slightly flared in a display of alarm. Her violet eyes narrowed at the cluster of humans gathered near one of the side tables, where drinks and finger foods mingled with datapads in quiet conversation. She recognized one of the speakers, a Terran xenobiologist, tall and soft-spoken, explaining something to an Avan scholar about reproductive adaptability. Lysera's heart pounded. Her hearing was sharp, trained, and unlike the delicate sensibilities of some of the noble courts, unclouded by ignorance. She had heard him clearly. Yes, the human said again, sipping from a clear glass. Human fertility isn't season-bound. We're biologically capable of breeding any day of the year. Has its pros and cons, of course. The rest of the words blurred as a rush of indignation flared through her chest. A trick. A provocation. No Iliari diplomat would speak of mating at a summit, and certainly not in such a casual tone. Was this how humans behaved? Were they mocking their hosts, bragging about some vulgar trait in front of lesser-blooded species? Lysera strode toward. The group like a storm wrapped in silk. Her crown of moonstone gleamed against the dark fall of her hair, and the sound of her footfalls silenced conversation in a 10-meter radius. Delegates turned to watch, tension prickling in the air. You! Disgrace yourselves, she said, voice like cold glass. Is this how Earth's emissaries behave? Discussing breeding like traders at a meat market? The scientist blinked, confused. Your Highness, I didn't mean offense. We were discussing species compatibility as part of the medical exchange, and you found it appropriate to announce your boundless rutting to the assembly? She snapped, all color drained from his face. Around them, a hush fell. The tension deepened like pressure before a storm. Across the room, Commander Jace Marin exhaled a quiet sigh. He pushed through the murmuring crowd with practiced ease, adjusting the fit of his Navy uniform and brushing back a lock of dark hair. He was tall, grounded, with the kind of calm usually found in shuttle pilots and men who'd lived through real war. His badge marked him as Earth's senior security liaison, though anyone who'd worked with him longer than 5 minutes knew he was more diplomat than soldier. Reaching the scene, Jace offered a shallow nod to the princess. Your Highness, may I offer clarity on behalf of my colleague? She didn't turn, but the flick of one ear suggested she'd acknowledged him. Jace turned slightly, his tone measured, even warm. I assure you, there was no insult intended. Dr. Linwood was discussing biology facts, not boasts. Humans simply evolved differently. No offense meant to the Iliari way. She turned toward him now, eyes sharp. You ask me to believe this as common truth? That your species lives in constant readiness to ... propagate? A beat of awkward silence passed. Jace raised a brow, the corner of his mouth twitching upward. Well, not all of us. Some of us can't even manage to get a date. A few nervous laughs bubbled around the edges of the crowd, but Lysera didn't laugh. You mock me further. Her voice dropped to something low and dangerous. This summit was meant to foster mutual respect. You've chosen to flaunt your nature like a carnival beast, bragging before others who revere sacred timing and unity. Jace's expression sobered. I don't mock you, he said gently. But I won't lie either. Humans are ... flexible. It's not about flaunting. It's biology. No more shameful than your sacred cycle. Just different. Lysera stared at him, struggling with emotions she didn't fully understand: offense, confusion, maybe even curiosity. Around them, delegates whispered. Eyes watched. And still she said nothing. Then, coldly and clearly, she said, "Then prove it." The hall stilled. Jace blinked. "I'm sorry? If what you claim is true, then let there be evidence. I demand observation of you." Jace almost choked. "Me? You seem proud of this trait," she said. "So be it. For the sake of diplomacy, I will witness the truth with my own eyes." The human ambassador coughed violently into his fist. The Ilyari courtiers whispered in alarm. Somewhere, a server dropped a tray. Jace stared at the princess, a faint crease forming between his brows. "Are you suggesting we—" "No," she snapped. "Not that. Observation. Controlled proximity. 1 week. You will remain within my private wing. I will determine if your words are truth or another human deception." And with that, she turned and walked away, leaving a stunned room and a very speechless Commander Jace in her wake. Jace Marin didn't remember giving his assent, not officially. One moment, he was standing there with 100 eyes burning holes into the back of his uniform. The next, he was in a sterile, velvet-smooth briefing room aboard the Ilyari flagship, listening to Earth's diplomatic ambassador run his hands through thinning hair and mutter, "Do not cause an incident. Too late for that." Across the Z table sat 2 of the princess's royal advisors, tall, fine-featured Ilyari nobles whose expressions were sculpted from glass. Everything about them, clothing, tone, even their posture, screamed composure. And yet Jace could feel it, tension, held just under the surface like taut wire. "The terms have been accepted," one of the Ilyari said calmly. "As per the right of clarification, your subject will remain in Her Highness's presence for no less than 7 standard rotations. He will be monitored for health, temperament, and consistency of claim." Jace gave a small, deliberate blink. Consistency of claim? In regard to his species? Availability? The advisor cleared his throat delicately, as if the word itself was beneath him. Jace sighed and leaned back in his chair, tilting his head until it tapped gently against the wall behind him. "I was just trying to stop a diplomatic meltdown, not enroll in a courtship program." The human ambassador shot him a sharp glance. "Jace, I'm cooperating," he muttered. "Just saying. Bit weird." "Bit weird?" The ambassador hissed. "You've just been volunteered for a week-long cultural immersion with the crown heir of a species that ritualizes mating like a holy sacrament. If this goes wrong, we don't just lose a treaty. We lose every human colony on this side of the Perseus arm." Jace closed his eyes and counted to 3. "I'm not going to seduce her," he said finally. "See that you don't," the ambassador said through clenched teeth. When the time came, Jace didn't bring much. His service pack, a change of civilian clothes, and a single leather-bound journal his sister had gifted him when he left Earth. The royal suite wasn't just another diplomatic wing, it was practically a temple. Pale blue walls glowed with living light, casting gentle pulses like a heartbeat. Curtains flowed as if in water. The air itself smelled like something blooming far beneath the ocean. 2 Ilyari guards opened the crystal doors with solemn grace. Lysera stood in the center of the chamber, robes exchanged for a sleeveless tunic that shimmered faintly with starless. Her long hair was tied in a coil down her back, and her arms were folded neatly as she regarded him. "You're late," she said without looking at a timepiece. "I wasn't aware I'd been given a schedule," Jace replied evenly. "You're in my quarters. Everything is on my schedule." He raised his hand slightly in mock surrender. "Fair enough." There was silence for a few long seconds as she stared at him. eyes narrowing, slightly studying, weighing. Jace could tell she was used to command, used to people stepping lightly around her. But not him, not today. So, he said, slinging his pack to the side with a soft thud. "Where's the microscope?" Lysera blinked. "What?" "For the observation," he said. "I figured you'd want to start with a blood sample. DNA swabs. Maybe a stamina test?" He smiled faintly. "I do pretty well on treadmills." She did not smile. "You mock this process." "I mock the absurdity," Jace replied, softer now. "But I get it. You think we're lying. You think we're brutes, flinging biology around like weapons. I think," Lysera said, her voice tightening, "that your kind has no reverence, no balance. Even now, you speak of your body as if it's a toy." "I speak of it like a human," Jace said. "Because that's what I am." She said nothing. Jace stepped a little closer, slow and respectful. "Look, I didn't mean to embarrass you. I didn't mean to offend anyone. But you asked for proof, and I'm here. For 7 days, I'll answer whatever questions you have. I'll be honest. Just ... Don't expect me to act like something I'm not." Lysera turned, her face slightly, as though she were watching him through a different lens, now measuring his sincerity, his posture, his restraint. She motioned to a curved lounge on the far wall. "You will sleep there. You will not enter the inner chamber. Meals are at dawn and dusk. I will question you at second light each day." He nodded. "I don't need much sleep anyway." She watched him a moment longer, then turned without another word, vanishing into her private chamber behind a wall of soft light. As the doors closed behind her, Jace exhaled. "Day 1, he muttered, flopping back on the lounge. "Don't get vaporized. Don't flirt. Don't breed." Somewhere deep in the quiet glow of the royal suite, a chime sounded as if the ship itself had laughed. And in the next room, Princess Lysera leaned against her wall, staring into the soft glow of her crystal mirror, wondering, not for the first time, what kind of madness she had invited into her sanctuary. The royal suite aboard the Ilyari vessel was unlike anything Jace Marin had ever known. It felt alive, walls pulsing gently with bioluminescent rhythms, the air cool and subtly laced with pheromonal undertones, designed to keep one calm, balanced, receptive. Everything here breathed elegance, control, and centuries of ritual. And Jace? He was a 6-foot Terran soldier sleeping on a couch that smelled faintly of moonroot silk. Day 2 had barely begun, and he already felt like he'd wandered into a temple dressed as a janitor. The chime rang at second light, soft and musical. A signal. Lysera was ready. Jace rubbed his eyes, pulled on his gray undershirt, and stepped into the observation chamber. It was round, softly lit, and utterly silent, except for the hum of power behind the walls. Princess Lysera sat on a crescent-shaped couch, hands resting neatly in her lap, her long braid draped over one shoulder. She looked up as he entered, but didn't speak. "So," he said lightly, standing near the wall, "do we start with a questionnaire, or am I supposed to jog in place until something interesting happens?" "You may sit," she said without emotion. He did. There was a datapad in her hand, though she didn't look at it right away. "I've studied your species' reproductive biology," she said, tone clinical, as if reading from a scroll. "I understand the basic system's hormonal cycles, fertility variants, hormonal triggers. But what I do not understand is your lack of rhythm." "Lack of rhythm?" Jace repeated, blinking. "That's the first time a princess has insulted my timing." She frowned. "I do not jest." "I know," he said, folding his hands in his lap, "and I'm not trying to be difficult. But our lack of rhythm is actually part of our rhythm. We adapt. We improvise. That's kind of our whole thing. Lysera stared at him for a long moment, studying the way he sat, how he answered. His posture was relaxed, but respectful. No arrogance, no nervous tics. Just a steady presence. It unsettled her more than she'd expected. Your kind bonds for emotional reasons, she said. Not only for lineage, not only during the sacred alignment. That ... is unnatural to us. Unnatural, Jace repeated softly. Or just unfamiliar? That stopped her for a beat. She looked down at her datapad, then set it aside. My people have sacred seasons. We do not choose them, they choose us. Once in 5 cycles, we are called. And when it comes, there is no delaying it, no choosing partners outside what is approved. The union must be accepted by the court of harmony. Sounds restrictive, he said carefully. It is sacred, she said firmly. Sacred, he echoed, nodding. And yet you questioned it the moment you heard something different. It made her eyes narrow. I questioned your intent. Why? Jace asked, voice low now. Because it made you uncomfortable? A silence stretched between them. Finally, she said, quieter this time, because it made me wonder. What else we haven't been told? There it was, the crack in the armor, the whisper of doubt. Not in him, but in the perfect story she'd been raised to believe. He leaned forward slightly. We don't claim superiority. We don't think your way is wrong. But we are different. And if you're willing to observe me for a week, just to prove that difference, maybe we're not the problem. Lysera didn't answer right away. She turned away and rose, moving to a tall window where the stars hung in silence beyond the veil of ship glass. My union has already been arranged, she said after a moment. At the next lunar rise, I will be joined to an heir of the Zreen dynasty, chosen for genetic compatibility and political strength. Jace didn't speak. He just watched her carefully. I will bond with someone I do not know, she continued, in a ritual older than most civilizations. There will be no conversation, no learning, no honesty, only form. I'm sorry, he said quietly. Lysera turned. Do not pity me. I don't, he said, but I wouldn't trade that life for mine. Not for all the crowns in the galaxy. Her gaze softened for a fraction of a second. Then the door chimed. One of her advisors entered, tall and draped in glimmering robes. He glanced at Jace with a flicker of distaste before addressing the princess. Your Highness, your evening council awaits. Lysera nodded once, then turned back to Jace. Our session is complete for today. You may return to your chamber. Jace stood. Of course. He turned to leave, but paused at the door. For what it's worth, he said, you don't seem like someone who needs to be told what to want. Then he stepped out, the door sliding shut behind him. Lysera stood very still, her hands tightening at her sides, her reflection staring back at her from the star-glass eyes, thoughtful, uncertain, and no longer entirely proud. Something was changing, and for the first time, she wasn't sure whether she should stop it or let it happen. Jace woke on the 5th morning to a chime that was softer than usual, almost hesitant, like the ship itself had noticed the shift between its 2 most unusual guests. He stretched on the moonroot lounge, wincing slightly from the stiffness in his shoulders, and pulled on his shirt. His movements had become routine, practiced wake, eat, wait, answer questions, try not to insult a goddess in royal skin. But something felt different today, when he stepped into the observation chamber. The lighting was dimmer than usual. Not cold or somber, but softer, more intimate. The floating orbs that usually glowed icy blue now shimmered in a warm violet hue. And at the center of the room, seated not on her formal platform, but on a wide bench near the window, sat Princess Lys Era. Her posture was relaxed, though regal as always. Her dark hair was unbraided, cascading in smooth waves past her shoulders. It was the first time Jace had seen her without the crownlet. Somehow, it made her seem younger. Still powerful, but reachable. She didn't look at him immediately. Instead, she gestured to the space beside her. Sit, she said, no datapad. No court formality. Jace obeyed, lowering himself onto the bench beside her, careful to keep a respectful distance. Outside the ship glass, a nebula bloomed in soft gold and coral. It stretched across the void like a wound healed by light. I have been thinking, she said quietly. Your people build bonds without cycles, without timing, without permission. You call it love, and it confuses me. Jace folded his hands. What confuses you about it? Lysera hesitated. Why you trust it, why you risk it. Our unions are stable, balanced. Yours burn like flares, brilliant, but unstable. They rise quickly and fall just as fast. He smiled faintly. Some do. Some last lifetimes. Some burn so brightly they light the whole sky. But either way, we choose. She glanced at him, expression unreadable. Even when it hurts? Especially when it hurts, he said, because that means it mattered. Silence passed between them, heavy with something unsaid. I watched your Earth stories, she said after a moment. The ones on your data archive. The wedding ceremonies, the hand-holding, the father giving his daughter away. I thought it was ceremony. Show. It is, Jace admitted. But it's also truth. It's a promise. We don't need the moon to tell us when. We know when we see them. When we feel it. She turned to look at him fully now. Her violet eyes glimmered with curiosity, but also something gentler, something uncertain. And have you ever felt it? She asked. Jace swallowed. Once. She tilted her head slightly. And did it last? No, he said, but I don't regret it. Even the heartbreak. For a long while, neither of them spoke. The ship drifted silently through the stars, and the observation room felt like a capsule lost in time. Then, softly, Lysera said, My body is changing. Jace blinked. What? The alignment draws near. I feel the stirrings heat in my skin, ache in my chest. It's the first sign. My cycle approaches. He sat up straighter. Do you want me to leave? No, she said too quickly. Then, quieter. I want to understand why your presence does not unsettle me more. He turned toward her. Because I'm not trying to take anything. I'm just here. Another pause. Then, you are unlike any being I have met, Jace Marin. He chuckled. That's what my ex said too, right before she threw her shoes at me. Lysera blinked and gave a soft, unexpected laugh. It was small, barely more than a breath, but it was real. I do not understand half of what you say, she murmured. That's fair, he said. I don't understand half the things I feel when I'm around you. That quieted her. She looked away, hands tightening slightly in her lap. Then, almost like a whisper, my father will forbid this. Jace turned to face the stars. Then we're not doing anything wrong. But they will think we are, she said. Let them, he answered. You asked for proof. Maybe this is it. Not blood tests. Not charts. Just this sitting here. Not running away. Facing what's real. Lysera stood slowly. Her silhouette was pale against the stars. I must rest, she said, voice distant. He nodded and remained seated as she walked away, her steps slower than usual. At the threshold of her chamber, she paused. Jace. He looked up. You confuse me. I get that a lot. She hesitated, then disappeared into the softly glowing curtain of light. Left alone, Jace leaned back against the window, watching. The stars rolled slowly by. His heart beat too loud in his chest. And somewhere, on the edge of something sacred. The line between observation and something far deeper had begun to blur. The temperature in the royal suite had risen, subtly, not enough to alarm the ship's systems, but enough that Jace noticed the sheen on his skin as he paced near the window. It was the 6th day. Lysera hadn't left her private chamber since. The night before, he hadn't seen her at breakfast nor heard her footsteps in the outer hall. The guards said nothing stone-faced, unreadable, but their postures were stiffer than usual. Something was happening. He couldn't sit anymore. He hated waiting, especially like this, in silence, with tension crawling like static over his skin. Then, just as he reached for his canteen, the chamber door opened with a soft hum. Lysera stepped out, but she was not as he had seen her before. Her usually smooth skin glowed faintly with a soft silver hue. Her eyes, always luminous, now shimmered like 1,000 reflections. A fine trace of sweat lined her collarbone, and her breath, though controlled, came slightly quicker than usual. Her royal tunic had been exchanged for a simple wrap of deep violet fabric, sleeveless, and clinging to her form in a way that made Jace instinctively look away. Her lunar heat had begun. Lysera stood at the threshold, one hand resting on the doorframe as if steadying herself. She blinked slowly. "You are still here," she said, her voice husky but calm. Jace turned fully to her, forcing himself to meet her gaze, not glance down. "You asked me to stay." She took one careful step forward. "You are not bound to obey." "I wasn't trying to impress anyone. Just didn't want you to. Go through this alone." Her eyes flicked over him, reading something behind the lines of his posture. Most males would see this moment as an invitation. Jace's jaw tightened. "I'm not most males." "No," she agreed, almost to herself. "You are not." A pause. The air between them shimmered, not with heat alone, but tension. Something living, electric. She walked slowly toward him, barefoot, silent. Her steps were graceful, but every inch of her radiated power. Not danger, something more ancient, primal. She stopped a pace away from him, close enough that he could smell the faint, herbal warmth of her skin. "Tell me," she said, barely above a whisper, "what do you see when you look at me now?" Jace swallowed. He answered honestly, "A woman on fire." She tilted her head. "And do you fear the flame?" "I respect it." A beat of silence. Then she stepped back, just slightly. Her shoulders, once drawn with tension, eased. "You could have taken advantage of my confusion, my body's pull. You did not. I never would." "Why?" "Because you're more than a cycle. More than your heat. And because I care more about your choice than mine." Her eyes searched his, and this time she found no humor, no games, no careful diplomacy, only truth. "You speak of love," she whispered, "but I think you show it more clearly than any words." He exhaled softly. "Then I'm doing it right." Lysera moved to the couch and sat slowly, folding her legs beneath her. She closed her eyes for a moment, grounding herself, fighting through the pressure building within. Jace remained standing. "Do you want me to leave?" She opened her eyes. "No." "You sure?" "Yes." He nodded and lowered himself onto the lounge across from her, keeping distance, but staying present. The warmth in the room pressed, in from all sides, yet the moment felt strangely peaceful. Lysera's breathing slowed. "My body calls for bonding, ritual, instinct. But your heart?" She looked up. "My heart wants truth. And time." Jace smiled faintly. "Then I'll give you both." No one moved. The ship hummed quietly around them, and somewhere in the distance, stars whispered through the void. For the first time in generations, an Eliari princess had chosen to experience the lunar pull, not as obligation, but as understanding, not with dominance, but with choice. And across from her sat a human male, hands resting quietly in his lap, who knew he could never touch her unless invited, but whose presence spoke more clearly than any lover's embrace. In that silence, Lysera closed her eyes and let herself rest, because for the first time she felt safe, and not because of her guards. Because of him. The next morning came quietly. Jace hadn't moved from his place. He'd fallen asleep upright, on the lounge, one hand resting on his knee, the other dangling loosely at his side. There had been no alarms, no summons, just the steady hum of the ship and the faint scent of Ilyari herbs drifting through the air. He blinked awake, eyelids sticky with fatigue. The violet glow of the chamber had dimmed to something cooler, now twilight blue. Restful. And Lysera was watching him. She sat curled on the same cushioned bench by the starview, arms wrapped loosely around her knees. Her long hair fell in waves over her shoulder, and her expression was unreadable. "How long have you been up?" Jace asked softly. "A while," she replied. "You okay?" She nodded. "My body has passed the peak. The lunar fire fades. It will not return for another season." He exhaled, relieved, though a strange sadness tugged at the corners of that breath. Lysera unfolded her legs and stood. Her steps were quiet as always, but there was something different now. Not the calculated grace of royalty, not the weight of ritual. She walked like someone stepping into a moment they weren't ready to name, but couldn't walk away from either. "You stayed," she said simply. "I told you I would. I expected you to be tempted." "I was," Jace admitted. "But not the way you think." Her head tilted, curious. "I was tempted to reach out," he said, "to touch your hand, to tell you I'd never seen anyone look so strong and so fragile at once. But I didn't, because none of that would have been for you. It would have been for me, and that's not what this was about." She stared at him in silence. Then, to his surprise, she stepped forward, slowly, until she stood directly in front of him. "You speak of restraint," she said, "as though it is weakness. But it is not. You denied nothing. You simply honored me more than my instincts did." Her fingers hovered lightly over his chest, not touching, just near enough that he could feel the heat of her hand. "I did not believe your people capable of such clarity." He smiled faintly. "We surprise people." "Indeed," she said, drawing her hand away. "And now I must face the council." His brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" "They've summoned me. The treaty is in question." "Because of this?" "Yes," she said, voice low. "There are whispers that I've been influenced, tainted by human contact." Jace stood, his voice firmer now. "That's not fair. You requested the observation. You upheld your tradition. You did nothing wrong." "They will not see it that way," she said, "but I am ready." She turned to go, then hesitated. "You should not come," she added, gently. "Screw that," he said. "You're not walking into that hall alone." Lysera blinked, surprised. "I may be human," he added, "but I'm still your witness." A smile touched her lips, small, tired, but real. Later that day, the grand chamber of accord echoed with voices. Dozens of Ilyari nobles stood in concentric circles, their flowing robes like ripples in a lake. The High King, Lysera's father, sat atop the dais tall, weathered, his crown a living lattice of silver branches. His eyes were cold. "You have completed the clarification rite," he said. "But rumors cloud your name. Did you act with integrity, Lysera?" "I did," she said, standing tall. "I remained within protocol. I honored the bond without violating it. Yet your eyes have changed," he said. "Your spirit is unsettled. Speak plainly. Were you compromised by this human?" Jace felt the words like a slap. But Lysera did not flinch. "I was not compromised," she said clearly. "I was enlightened." The hall shifted. Murmurs rose. "My people bond by tradition," she said, voice rising. "But what is a tradition that cannot survive truth?" I watched him. I learned from him. And not once did he violate me. Not once did he assume or force or dishonor my silence. Her voice softened. "In all my life, no suitor has ever done less and meant more." The High King stared down at her, unmoved. "You risk our treaty for sentiment." "No," she said. "I honor it by choosing truth over comfort." A silence that followed was thunderous. Then the king stood slowly. "So be it," he said. "Let the record show that Princess Lysera has fulfilled the rite, and her witness human has caused no provable dishonor. The treaty will proceed." But then, coldly, "However, the union with Isreen shall still occur as scheduled." A knife in velvet. Lysera stood frozen. Jace's heart sank, but then she turned slowly and looked up at her father. "I invoke the Erlen rite," she said. Voice like steel. Gasps filled the chamber. The king's face turned gray. "You would not dare." "I dare," she said. "I choose my own path, my own bond," Jace whispered. "What's the Erlen rite?" She turned, her eyes soft now. "It's the right to choose my mate." The room erupted in chaos. Delegates shouted, nobles protested. But Lysera stood unmoved. And for the first time, Jace understood. This wasn't about biology anymore. This was about choosing what kind of future she would fight for. And now, she had. The storm in the council chamber had not passed quietly. Even as Lysera stood with her spine straight and her voice steady, the weight of her declaration rippled like shockwaves through the ancient halls of Iliari law. Nobles hissed and barked tradition. A few gasped in awe. The High King stared down at his daughter, not with anger, but with something deeper, disbelief. "You invoke the Erlen rite," he repeated, his voice dangerously calm. "You, who were born of royal blood, who was promised since the moment your lungs first filled with air." Lysera met his gaze, unmoved. "A promise made without my consent is not a bond, it is a burden." A silence followed, and then Jace stepped forward. His boots echoed in the grand chamber, so out of place against the polished obsidian floor. He felt the heat of dozens of alien stares, many cold, a few curious. Lysera didn't move, but her hand dropped subtly to her side, open. A sign, an unspoken call for trust. He stepped beside her. "I don't claim to understand all your laws," Jace said, his voice steady. "But I know what it means when someone stands up for themselves, even when it costs them everything." The king's gaze shifted to him like a blade. "You will not speak, Terran." "I'll speak if she wants me to," Jace said. Lysera lifted her chin. "I do." Another wave of murmurs spread like static through the room. Jace's voice didn't rise. He didn't challenge the room with volume. He challenged them with presence. "Your daughter asked for proof, not dominance, not flattery. Proof of what we are. She watched me for a week, listened to my heart, not just my biology. And I listened to hers. I didn't come here to steal your air. I came here because I was asked to show the truth. And I did." He paused. "I didn't ask for this," he said. "But if she chooses me, it's not because of instinct. It's not about the heat or the cycle or the stars. It's because someone finally gave her the right to choose." The High King didn't move for a long time. Then, slowly, he stood. "The Erlen rite has not been invoked in over 900 years, he said coldly. "It exists for the rarest of bonds, those thought impossible." He looked to the priests in the upper alcoves. "Bring the memory flame." A hush fell. From behind the dais, 2 Iliari priests emerged, carrying a floating crystal orb wrapped in silver vines. It pulsed with an orange-red glow, a living flame, captured in light. This flame, the king said, has tested the souls of our people for generations. When two minds enter it together, it reveals the truth of their bond. If it flickers, the bond is shallow. If it dims, the bond is false. But if it flares, he paused, then it is destiny. Lysera stepped forward without hesitation. Jace hesitated, but only for a breath. Then he followed. The memory flame rose before them, casting warm flickers of light across their faces. A soft hum vibrated in Jace's bones as he drew closer. Place your hands on the flame, the priest instructed. Jace glanced at Lysera. Her eyes met his. There was no fear in them now, only certainty. They reached forward together and touched. The flame pulsed, once, twice, then it erupted. A tower of light shot upward, washing the chamber in gold and scarlet. Gasps rose from every direction. The heat was not painful. It was alive, gentle, honest. It wrapped around them like silk, and then the flame stilled, glowed steady, unbroken. The priest dropped to his knees. The bond is real, he whispered. The Arelyn has chosen, Lysera exhaled. Not relief, release. The king said nothing for a long while. Then, in a voice quieter than anyone had expected, he said, "Then, the law is clear. She may choose." Lysera turned to face the chamber, her voice firm. "I choose Commander Jace Marin of Earth." And the galaxy changed in that moment. Because it was not a love born of mating cycles or political advantage. It was not arranged. It was earned. The High King stepped back. Not defeated, but changed. Something old in his posture slumped. Something proud in his eyes faded. "Then let the treaty be signed," he said. "And may our worlds walk forward together." Cheers broke out not everywhere, but in enough places to matter. Ambassadors moved. Papers were signed. Banners unfurled. But in the center of the hall, untouched by all of it, Lysera turned to Jace. "Still confused?" she asked softly. He smiled. "Only by how I ended up here." "Then stay confused," she said. "Just stay." Jace reached for her hand, and this time she didn't pull away. The stars over Iliari Prime burned brighter that night. From orbit, the sky was a sea of light peace banners streaming between vessels, diplomatic signals weaving like ribbon across the void. The treaty was signed. The summit was over. And for the first time in living memory, humans and Iliari stood not as strangers or rivals, but as allies. In the ceremonial chamber atop the moonspire, the tallest structure in the Iliari capital, Princess. Lysera stood beside Jace beneath the twin moons. No guards, no priests, just the two of them and the silence that comes after storms. She had shed her ceremonial robes for something simpler, a pale garment that whispered around her ankles like falling water. Her hair, once bound tight in braids of power, now hung freely across her back. The moonlight shimmered across her skin, and for once, she looked not like a royal, but like a woman who had finally stepped into her own life. Jace stood beside her in a new uniform trimmed in silver and deep blue, with the crest of Earth and Iliari stitched side by side on his shoulder. He looked out at the stars and smiled faintly. "They're not staring anymore," he said. Lysera glanced at him. "Oh, they are. They just do it more respectfully now," he chuckled. "Great. Now I'm infamous and diplomatic." She turned to him fully. "You're more than that." He met her gaze. "So are you." They stood in silence for a time, the breeze warm with the scent of crystal-petaled flowers from the gardens below. "You changed everything," Lysera said quietly. "Not just the treaty. Not just me." He shook his head. "You changed yourself. I just reminded you that you could." Then came a soft chime at the balcony arch. A servant approached with a glowing scroll. It's time, he said with a bow. Jace raised a brow. Time for what? Lysera smiled. You're being summoned. To what? To be named Earth's first official ambassador to the Iliari. Empire. Jace blinked. I didn't sign up for that. You didn't sign up for any of this, she said. And yet you handled it better than any diplomat I've ever met. He hesitated. Are you sure they'll accept that? I'm not just choosing you as a bondmate, Lysera said. I'm naming you as my co-voice. Half of every decision that joins our worlds. If they want our unity, they must accept it all. His heart beat harder. And you? She reached out, placing a hand against his chest. I already did. The scroll glowed, unfolding in the air, revealing the dual crests. Lysera reached out and pressed her palm to the center. The mark flared gold, sealing the accord. Jace followed her lead, his hand pressing against hers. The stars shifted above them, as if watching. Later, as they returned inside, Lysera pulled Jace aside. There's one more thing, she said. A secret. One that was kept from even me. She handed him a small crystalline tablet. Ancient records. I had them unsealed after the bond test. He activated the tablet. What he saw. Made his breath catch. An ancient star map. Symbols in both Iliare and an older form of Earth's long-lost protoscript. Single sentence shimmered across the screen in both tongues. Long ago, we were one. Jace looked up, stunned. Your people came from us? Lysera whispered. Or perhaps we came from you. The records are unclear. But somewhere in the past, we were the same. Jace stared at the stars, the magnitude sinking in. No wonder the flame responded. Lysera nodded. We weren't just bonded by chance. We were finding each other again. They stood side by side in the quiet, no longer divided by culture, law, or distance, but united by blood long forgotten. A galaxy watched their story unfold. Some doubted, some celebrated, but history would remember them not as legend, but as truth. The human who stayed when he could have walked away, and the alien princess who chose him, not for what he could give her, but for what he refused to take. Their story spread like fire through the stars, and every time someone questioned it, humans can't breed year-round, can they? The answer came, soft and certain, with a laugh from those who knew. Apparently, they can, but that's not why she chose him. And somewhere, in the quiet heart of a once lonely empire, Lysera would smile and say, That one? He is meant for me.